Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Well, so we are again dealing with a nadir in Jewish history, where the Israelites, just 40 days after receiving the Ten Commandments, are now breaking the first couple of commandments right off the bat, and worshiping other gods. So just finishing off this little part where it says, "Vayashkimu mimochorat," they got up early. They couldn't wait. Remember, Aaron had said there'll be a holiday, a festival to the Lord tomorrow, and it says they got up early on the next day. V'ya'alu olot, they brought burnt offerings. V'yagishu shlamim, and they offered up peace offerings. Vayeshev ha'am le'echol v'shato, and the people sat down to eat and to drink. V'yakumu l'tzachek, and they got up to make sport. Ay. Vayashkimu, they got up early. They couldn't wait. They could not wait to do this. And Rashi says, Hasatan zirzam, the Satan urged them, kedei sheyachdeu, in order that they should sin. And again, it's speaking, of course, metaphorically, and just saying, by trying to externalize what was going on, I think that in some ways it's maybe referring to the fact that when we act on our impulses, we're allowing our nature to take over. And that as human beings, part of our being human beings is the ability to overcome our impulses. And so many of the mitzvot, if not the whole concept of mitzvot, is to help us grow beyond our urges, grow beyond our impulses. So they got frightened and they did whatever they felt like doing. And of course, we see impulsive behavior going on today too, part of human nature. So litzachek, to make sport. So this word litzachek, and we know that the word tzachok means to laugh. And laughter is a very interesting phenomena. It's a very interesting expression, emotion, because you can laugh when you're frightened, you can laugh when you're angry, you can laugh when you're scared, you can laugh for lots of reasons. But it does represent something very deep emotionally within a person. And it says, so Rashi tells us, yesh b'mashma hazeh, right? He says the implication of litzachek, to make sport, right, or to laugh, gilui arayot. It has that also. This word incorporates within it the idea of sexual immorality. Kamoshin Nemar, and there's a verse to support this, Genesis chapter 39, which has to do with the attempted seduction of Joseph by Potiphar's wife. And afterwards, when her husband comes home, she tries to put the blame on Joseph. She frames him essentially. And she says to her husband, she puts the blame on her husband. That's what she does. This story is so amazing, right? And she says, the servant you brought, you got the servant, and he came to litzachekbi. That's the word she uses. In other words, in that case, the suggestion is either to seduce or even to rape. So that's one understanding of this word. Ushfichut damim, it also has the notion of blood, spilling blood. Kamoshin Amar, there's another example from the book of Samuel, second book of Samuel, chapter 2. Yakumu na'arim. I believe this is a conversation between Avner, who was the general of David's army, and I'm just blocking for this moment the head of Saul's army. It'll come to me. I'm just blocking right now. and they are saying to each other, let the men go up and make sport, meaning to fight each other. And it does ultimately involve the death of one of them. Let them make sport before us. Well, you know, just saw, by the way, that apparently in Sonoma County, this person was arrested. He had something like 200 roosters that he used for cockfighting. Human nature, impulses, etc. Afkan Neherag Hur, in this case, Moses, or rather Aaron, had seen that Hur, remember his brother-in-law, had been killed. So there's that connotation. Again, what does it say about human impulses? So, new thought. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. So now God addresses Moses and he says, Lech raid, go down. Go down. Ki shichet amcha, for your people, notice the pronoun there, your people have acted perversely. Asher he'elita me'eretz Mitzrayim, your people whom you brought up from the land of Egypt have acted perversely. Now, on the surface, one could say, it's like when the child acts very badly, and the dad comes home, and the mom says, you know what your son just did, right? So that from a literary point of view, it's a way of expressing the way in which God wants to withdraw from being associated with the Jewish people. But you're going to see an interesting Rashi just in a moment, how that might be understood actually in a literal kind of way. So, first of all, this word vaydaber, it should ring out. It means to speak in a harsh way, right? Speak in a harsh way. Lashon koshi, has the connotation of stern words. And there in Genesis chapter 42, when the brothers who have gone down to Egypt have heard Joseph's words to them, remember, he accuses them of being spies, right? They come back and they report to Jacob. Or rather, it says even there in chapter 42, it talks about Joseph speaking to them, and it says, Vaydaber itam kashot, right? He spoke sternly to them, and that connotation of daber. So amar we could translate as say, and daber we can translate as speak. But of course, speak in English doesn't have that harsh connotation, but it does in Hebrew. There's a word davar, which means like a cattle prod. So it's probably related to this idea. Lechred, go down, right? Brachot, this is from the tractate Brachot in the Talmud, page 32. Raid migdulatcha, he says, go down from your greatness. You are reduced in your own greatness. Lo natati lacha gedula, the only reason I gave you preeminence, ella bishvilam, it was on the account of the Jewish people. Ba'ota she'am, period, on account of the Jewish people. That was the reason for his greatness. And something for leaders to think, right? That whatever preeminence they have comes on account of the people they're leading. New thought, Ba'ota sha'a, at that very moment, nitnadeh Moshe, mipi beit din shel mala. He says, in that sense, Moses, in other words, he was cast out, he was excommunicated at the behest of the court, the heavenly court. And that's the raid. Go out. No longer. Shichet amcha, your people have acted perversely. So this idea of your people, right? So this is how Rashi understands it on the basis of the tradition. Shichet Ha'am lo nemar. He points out, it doesn't say shichet ha'am, it doesn't say the people, right? Ela amcha. But it says your people. How were these Moses' people? So we're going to explain. Erev Rav. This is the mixed multitude, the people who were not Israelites, who joined the Jewish people in leaving Egypt. Erev Rav shekibalte me'atzmacha. He says, you received them on your recognizance. You're the one who decided, Moses, to accept these people, v'giartam, and you converted them, v'lo nimlachta bi, and you didn't consult with me, v'amra amarta, and you thought, tov sheyidbeku gerim b'shchina, it is a good thing that gerim, that literally, of course, a ger can mean a sojourner or a stranger, should cling to the divine presence. So this is a difficult statement. It really is, because there is ambiguity, it's true, within the tradition regarding the idea of people attaching themselves to the Jewish people. And I think it's because people do it for different reasons. And sometimes, there are people without any doubt who do it because they love God, they love what they understand the Jewish tradition teaches about that relationship we're to have with the divine. And there are sometimes people do it for convenient reasons. And it's hard for me to consider Moses, to blame, as it were, Moses for this. But again, you know that in the course of our studies together, I don't try to, put band-aids or try to hide things from you. We have to deal with it. Haim, yeah, David.
Yeah. So it basically is this what is God saying that it's basically the people that came along, with the Jewish people that are the cause of creating the golden calf
Yes,
and
yes.
okay, but
Go on. Oh,
okay,
please go
but
on.
yeah, I was going to say, but there has to be responsibility amongst the Jewish people. I mean, I'm sure not all of them that created it. I'm sure there are some people. The Jewish people were involved in this as well. So or is that not the case? Was it only the people that came along that created the golden calf, and the Jewish people didn't participate? You
Right.
know,
Good. So I think right off the bat, I would say this is only the beginning, at least for now, and possibly within the scope of what we're doing right now. It's just the beginning of an understanding. It is not the whole story. And we need to be very careful about withholding judgment on this particular, on this particular passage, as we should on any passage, but certainly these difficult ones. Let me just finish this off, and then I want to
sure.
go back and discuss your comment, right? So, Haim, these are the ones she she chitu vehishchitu, right? Shachtu vehishchitu. In other words, they acted perversely, and they caused others to act perversely as well. Okay, so here are just some initial thoughts about what we just read. First of all, I want to point out that the Torah itself doesn't say it in any direct kind of way. It is an interpretation that is implied by the words. Okay. Number two, I think that in all fairness, the rabbis, who are the ones who are coming up with these interpretations, want understand that the Jewish people is debased at this particular time. Under the Romans, they'd lost the temple, they'd been thrown into exile. We know that over the centuries to our own very day, we see how Jews have been treated by people. And that in some ways it's a way for the rabbis to try and mitigate some of the criticisms and the hatred that the Jewish people had to face. In other words, if we contextualize this particular story, we don't need to take it literally, Okay, we need to understand that it's like when somebody in your family does something wrong, okay, and you don't abandon them, okay, and you try to look for whatever defense you can for them. And this is a defense. It's a defense. I don't think that the tradition in general is against the idea of accepting converts. I will tell you that there are certain communities that will not accept converts. Their tradition. So, for example, I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm pretty sure that, for example, the Syrian Jewish community refuses to accept conversion as a legitimate entry point for Judaism. You know that I myself, in general, feel that we need to have really revise and rethink our whole attitude, whatever is there in the tradition that tends to look at non-Jews in a negative way, that in fact we should understand that the destruction of the northern kingdom basically means that what it's trying to tell us is that every single human being has Jewish blood in them, and that consequently we should look at people based on their characters and what they do, and not by their descendancy, etc. Not only that, I feel that both Christianity and Islam have such very, very deep roots within Jewish tradition, and that we really should see one another as members of the same family. This is my own personal feeling, and I feel that, things have happened. Uh, we read, of course, in our interpretations as we were going through Rashi, how the Erev Rav, right, this mixed multitude, had in fact had used sorcery to create the golden calf, etc., etc. So I think this is very deep stuff. I think again, this is one of those cases where your heart is going to inform you on how you want to understand this. And I really, as I said, I'll go back to say that I think the rabbis were trying to calm and bring consolation to a people that they were leading, who were going through terrible, terrible times. So, David, or anyone, if any of you want to respond, I am absolutely open if you have any further questions about this.
I'm still not sure that addresses whether I mean I totally get it, but I'm still not sure if it addresses, and maybe it's not important, whether or not it was just
Okay,
the people that came along, or if it was also the Jewish people that participated in this.
very good. Okay, so here's how I think I will try and answer your question now. Okay, let us say that it was the Erev Rav. Just take this at face value, and say they're the ones who initiated that. But there's no question, even in this interpretation, that the Jewish people participated. And I have to tell you, the argument of the devil made me do it is a very poor argument.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take away in the least or try to suggest that the Israelites were not involved. Even the Rashi makes it clear that the Israelites were happy to participate. And that still, even though just because they didn't initiate it, doesn't take away blame or guilt from what happened.
I think that it's a very apologetic
Yes,
approach towards the Jewish
yes,
people,
yes,
and
yeah, it
it's
is.
certain, and it is not really in line with virtually all the interpretations that I've received up to this day.
Well,
In other
they were
words,
all wrong, me, so
uh,
don't worry about it.
well, yeah, it begins to sound like a Republican
Mm.
apology. It's no offense to the Republicans in the group,
Not in the
but
least. I know, yeah.
all right, okay, no, it's.
So, again, you have to contextualize these things.
Well, does subsequent commentary? I mean, this is where Torah Tamima might come in handy.
Exactly.
Do they say much about this particular, or
Okay,
does
so
he
I
say
have
much about this comment?
right. I haven't read
Mm,
Torah Tamima. I don't know. I'm not going to look into it right now because my
You got a
focus
lot
is
to do.
on
Yeah.
doing what we're
Yeah.
doing right now.
Okay.
Uh, So all I'm saying is just keep an open mind and listen, there's a place for apologetics. There really is. And we know this. So just as it stands, I don't think, again, it is not going to whitewash, which is what my last comment clarified. It doesn't whitewash what the Jewish people did.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the text itself, of course, isn't going to whitewash them, and we're going to see that in a moment. All right.
Right. Yeah.
But the relationship of the Jewish people and the divine, the relationship between humanity and the divine is complex. And we need to be aware of that. But let's keep going. Yeah, go
Mordecai,
ahead.
one thing.
Yes.
If Aaron was just in the position of responding to the non-Jews, I
Hmm.
don't think he would have capitulated so quickly.
That's an interesting point. I don't know, Morris, because he saw how they killed Hur, right? And he figured because Hur had tried to resist them. And they were so hell-bent on doing what they were going to do. I mean, we live in similar times, sadly. We really do, where people are convinced of the just and justify very obnoxious beliefs and are willing to kill over it. They do. And Aaron felt that if they killed him, right, it would be even a greater blot, that they had killed their priest. So that there are, again, complicated or complex reasons for why Aaron did. And we did go over some of them because it says Aaron saw. And so we discussed, Rashi tells us, what did he see, right? And see can also mean to understand. He saw some things, he also understood some things. Let's keep going. All right. So this is a continuation of what God is saying to Moses. Saru Maher, they have turned away quickly, right? They couldn't wait, right? They turned away quickly. Min haderech, from the path, asher tzivitim, which I commanded them. Asu lahem egel masecha, they made for themselves a molten calf. V'yishtachavu lo, and they bowed down to it. V'yizbechu lo, and they made sacrifices. They brought offerings to it. V'yomru, and they said, Ele Elohecha Yisrael, these are your gods, O Israel, asher he'elucha me'eretz Mitzrayim, which brought you out from the land of Egypt. So. So that there's no commentary on this. It speaks for itself. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. So notice, by the way, it doesn't say Vaydaber here. It says Vayomer. Just the subtle distinction, right? Because these words are harsh words, and these words, you'll see, it's going to sound harsh, but in some ways it's not. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and God said to Moses, Ra'iti et ha'amazeh. Again, here's this word ra'ah, right? I see, which can mean both to see in terms of looking and seeing something. It can also mean in terms of understanding. Et ha'amazeh, this nation, this people. Vehine, and indeed, am kshe orefu, they are a stiff-necked nation. This is the very nature of the fact that they couldn't wait to go away from what God had commanded them. This Kshe Orif is a way of describing the resistance we have to actually perform the mitzvot, to try and find reasons either to rationalize them away or simply say, one of my favorites sayings, ain't no one gonna tell me what to do. So, Kshe Orif, stiff-necked. He breaks it down. Machzirim kshe orpan or koshi orpan. They turn their necks, their stiff necks, leneged mochichaihem, to those against those who admonish them. Ask yourself, how much does a person like to be corrected? And it's the natural instinct, the impulse is to reject correction. And so the degree to which one welcomes correction and doesn't push back is actually a spiritual grade. Umima'anim, and they refuse lishmoa, they refuse to listen. Literally, don't want to tell me what to do. So you can see that there is a deep, deep spiritual value in the very concept of mitzvot. That it is a way, again, to try to grow beyond just being animals. Animals essentially act on the impulses. And if we want to become human beings, we need to know what impulses are healthy and what impulses aren't healthy, when we have to, in some ways, dance with those impulses, but how to handle it. So, a little bit more. Va'ata, and now, hanichali, leave me alone. This is God saying to Moses, leave me alone. Vayichar apimahem, let my anger blaze against them. Va'achalem, and I will bring them to an end. Va'aseh otcha legoy gadol, and I will turn you into a great nation. In other words, your descendants will become a great nation. So in some ways, this is a test of Moses, and it's a test of the nature of Moses' leadership, right? To what degree do leaders use the position of leadership to aggrandize themselves and to benefit themselves? So basically, he's saying to Moses, you've remained faithful. No one else has. I'm going to wipe out those people who aren't faithful, and just your descendants will be the ones who survive. Let's take a look at the Rashi. So this is the thing. This statement, Hanichali, leave me alone, is an amazing statement. Hanichali, right? Adain lo shamanu, we haven't yet seen, we haven't seen in any way, Shehit Palel Moshe Alehem, that Moses made any appeal. There was no appeal. What's God telling Moses to leave him alone? Right? It's an anticipatory statement. Moses hadn't said a word, and God is saying to Moses, leave me alone. Vahu omer hanichali, and God is saying to him, leave me alone. Ella. But what in fact was going on is, kan patach lo petach. God was in fact giving Moses an opening. V'hodi'o, and he was letting Moses know, shehadavar, that this whole business, right, whether the Israelites would survive or not, right, talui boy, was going to depend on him, that is, on Moses. She'im yitpalel alehem, that should he pray, that Moses pray on their behalf, lo yikalem, he would not destroy them. So there's the Vayomer. That is, okay. So Moses, as we'll see, was one smart, good, wise leader. And we're going to end it here for today. And God willing, the next time we're going to go to the next little passage. This is the passage, by the way, that we read in the Torah on fast days. On fast days, there's a Torah reading and actually a Haftarah reading, and this is, in fact, in the afternoon, there's a Haftarah reading. But this is a passage we read both in the morning and in the evening on fast days. So.
And just to break in for the
Sure,
fast of
no,
Esther,
go right ahead.
there's fast days and there's fast days. Is this also for the fast of Esther? It is. Okay.
It is. We read this on the fast of Esther as well. On
There
Tisha
we go.
B'Av, we read a Haftarah in the morning as well. It's a different Haftarah, but in the afternoon, we read this particular Haftarah on Tisha B'Av in the afternoon. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm so glad to share this with you. You can only imagine what a joy it is for me to share this with you. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, and that way you can